Welcome back. So I had some free time today and I decided to make another story time video. I really like making these videos so you guys can kind of get to know me in a way, and know a little bit about who I am and where I've been and stuff. So the house is completely quiet. I filmed a video the other day, talking about the time that I got fired from a pretty well-known jewelry store. If you guys want to see that, make sure you like this video. Um, Subscribe if you're up for it. If not, just keep watching my videos. It's really nice to have new people here. So yeah, but today I was kind of thinking about how my oldest daughter is turning 13 and how I found out that I was going to be a teen mom. And I thought that it would be a good story time to share with you guys and to talk to you guys a little bit about teen pregnancy on here. Yeah, because I was pretty young when I got pregnant with her. So let's just get started. Um, so this took place in 2005, which I know for a lot of you seems like forever ago, but I was 17, which doesn't sound very young, but it was. And I kind of was like bad teen, if you will, I guess. I kind of just did my own thing and lived my life the way that I wanted to live my life, and there wasn't anybody that was really gonna tell me what to do or where to go or anything like that. Um, Now, I do want to go back a little bit. In grade 9, I was put on birth control, and I became very, very sick from it. And it's because I was allergic to it. So then they put me on another birth control, and I got even more sick from that second birth control than the first one. Um, and that happened quite a few times. I think I ended up being on 4 or 5 different types of birth control that were like birth control pills and patches and stuff. That I ended up being very, very sick from. Now I could have gotten the depot shot or a IUD, but my mom didn't want to give me either of those because of my history of depression. Depot, like Depo-Vera, if anybody knows, it can make you have suicidal thoughts. It can increase depression. It can cause you to have like very vivid, very scary dreams and all of this stuff. So my mom wasn't up for that. And my mom is 100% against IUDs. So at that point, I was kind of just not on any type of birth control. Um, and it was like that until after I had my now 13-year-old. So at 17, I had just gone through some pretty traumatic experiences. Um, I actually had gotten pregnant the spring of 2005. I had found out that I was pregnant with my boyfriend at the time. We ended up breaking up. Things were still really good between us. We stayed really, really close. And 4 months into my pregnancy, I actually had a miscarriage and I lost that baby. Um, so after that happened, that was in August of 2005. And by November of 2005, I was back to my old ways. I was kind of running the roads. I had dropped out of school again. I was hanging out with bad people again. And I was kind of just in a place where I didn't give a shit about anything. And I didn't even care about myself again. I felt like after being with my ex for over a year, us losing the baby, and just everything, like I was just kind of left on my own, and I was really, really, really struggling with all of that. So I started acting out again. I started just causing hell for everyone and anything. And I knew this guy, and him and I had been friends before that. We actually knew each other for over 3 years at this point, and he was a lot older than me. I'm not going to say his age. I'm not going to put him on blast. I acted grown. I acted more mature, and it wasn't against the law where I lived for us to be together. But I know that a lot of people had a lot of really negative things to say to him, and I know that a lot of people had some really nasty things to say to me because of our age difference. It wasn't like 20 years or anything like that. It wasn't anything crazy like that, but he was in his mid 20s and I was 17. So that's just kind of a rough idea of the age gap that was going on. Him and I kind of just became friends. We were just hanging out and partying all the time. We had never established that we were together. We had never established that I was his girlfriend or he was my boyfriend. And we both were cool with that. There was nothing wrong with that. It was what it was. And we both knew that. And we just enjoyed each other's company. We had so much fun. We were hanging out. We were partying. We were going places. And you know what I mean? Like, we were all just kind of doing our own thing. Sorry. So, all of November and all of December, him and I were, obviously we were sleeping together, and it was cool. It was fun. Everything was fine. Shortly before, I want to say it was before New Year's, so it was like somewhere in between Christmas and New Year's, he decided to start dating this girl. So he basically told me like, hey, we can't be hanging out anymore. We can't be like together anymore. You can't be coming here, da 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 da. And I was kind of like, okay, cool, whatever. Like, I didn't really care, if that makes sense. And he was like, we can still be friends and whatever. And I was fine with that. So then, everything was fine. And he was with this girl and all was well and whatever. And for the purpose of this, because I'm gonna need to say a name for him. I'm not gonna say his real name. He is still involved in our kids' lives, and I will kind of get into that towards the end. For the purpose of this, I'm gonna call him Will. So Will and I were cool. Everything was good. We weren't talking anymore. Just, he lived in a different town. I lived here, and we just stopped talking. So fast forward to January 9th. I had stayed over at my friend Shayla's house. What up, Shayla? That's her real name. I've told her that I was going to, maybe possibly post a video about this one day. She knows how I feel about her, and I really appreciated her friendship. So I had stayed over at her house, and because it was winter, everybody thought that I had the flu. I was sick all the time. I was so sick. That pregnancy was so hard on me. I had that hypergravarium or whatever it is. Princess or Duchess Kate had it. I ended up having that really, really young. I was super sick. They couldn't figure it out. No pills helped me ever, but I'll get into all that. So we were hanging out at her house. I was super sick. Her mom was like, I think she should go to the hospital. And I'm like, no, I seriously probably just have the flu. I had been up all night getting sick. And then all of a sudden I was laying in Shay's bed, and Shay looked at me and she goes, when was the last time you had your period? And I was just kind of like laying there, and I was feeling like such garbage that I was just like, what? And she's like, do you think you could be pregnant? And I just kind of like remember like laying there and being like, oh. And because of my lifestyle and because of the type of person I was, I didn't keep track of that stuff. I didn't care. It was what it was. It is what it is. And now Will and I had been super careful. He was very careful about using protection and cautious and da. But there were two different times where one time was a huge snowstorm, and we could not get out of his house. Like, we could not leave the house. That the snow was halfway up the door. Like, that's not an exaggeration. If you live in Canada, you'll understand the kind of Canadian winters that we go through here. It is insane. It is intense. There are days where you get snowed in for literal days and you cannot leave, and it takes, hours and hours to shovel yourself out. And I remember one time we could not get to the store. So there were a couple of times, mind you, they were only 2 or maybe 3 times. But that's all it takes, right? So her and I end up talking, and she convinces me to go to the health clinic, and I'm like, I'm fine. No, I'm not pregnant. That's not even going to happen. Whatever. We get to the health clinic, and I sign in, and all of this stuff is going on. And the lady pulls me back. She goes, what brings you in? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, like I've been super, super sick, blah, 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 blah. She takes my temperature and I don't have a temperature. And she's like, okay. She's like, when was your last menstrual cycle? And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. So, because I'm 17 and reckless and ridiculous. So that's just my life. And she was like, okay. She's like, have you had unprotected sex? And I'm like, yes. Like, I have, unfortunately, because I am, again, dumb and reckless. Hello. So she ends up doing the pregnancy test, and I'm kind of sitting there, and I remember sitting there super, like, cocky and, like, nonchalant, like, I'm not gonna get pregnant. Like, that's crazy. Twice in 1 year. There's no way. Like, what are the chances? I just lost a baby in August. Like, that's not gonna happen. That's not gonna happen. And she looks at me and she goes, oh, honey. And, like, I remember my head being down and, like I just snapped my neck and looked right at her and I'm like, what? And she's like, you're pregnant. I started bawling my eyes out. I started losing my mind because I truly believed that I wasn't pregnant. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I seriously had convinced myself on that bus ride to the health clinic, that I was fine, that I wasn't pregnant, that wasn't happening. So when I came out of that room, Shay could see on my face that I was crying and stuff, and we got back outside and I ended up violently getting sick. And at that point, it wasn't because of the pregnancy. I could tell that it was my nerves. I was so scared to go home and tell my mom again that I was pregnant for the second time in a year. I felt like telling my mom the spring prior to this and everything we had gone through with my family and with my dad and my grandparents on my dad's side and everything, that after we all got through the initial shock of me being 16 and pregnant, 17, whatever, it was right on the cusp of my birthday. I was 16 when I got pregnant the first time. And then losing the baby, we all went through it. It wasn't just me. Like, we all went through that loss together as a unit, as a whole. It wasn't just my loss. And that's like the really good thing about my family is like, I never felt alone, right? At all. So I think my family just expected me to, I don't want to say like it was a mistake, but to go through that again, to put myself in that situation again, I guess is the best way that I can say it. So we went back to my house and I went in my room and I remember just crying and crying and crying, and my mom's in the living room and we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. Okay, I need to express this to y'all. My parents had only been separated for maybe 2.5 years at this point, and my mom and I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. We did not have like a big house. We didn't have room for a baby. We didn't have like nothing. And before, when I was pregnant, the plan was, because my ex and I were still super close, that him and I were still going to get our own place together and raise the baby together, but not be together. And I know that sounds crazy to most people, but him and I were like best friends. So it was not that hard. And we were both really young. He was only a year older than me and he was working full time, and it just made sense to the both of us. That was not the case with this. Like, Will and I were not dating. We were not together. I don't even think my parents even knew about him, to be honest with you. Like, if I remember correctly, I don't think my parents even knew who the dad was. Like, I know for a fact my dad didn't. Until I was like 4 months pregnant. So my mom finally came in the room and I was sitting there and she could tell I was really upset. And she goes, "What is going on? What's wrong? Like, you need to talk to me. Obviously, something's up. Did something happen? Like, what's going on?" And Shay was kind of like, "I gotta go home. You need to talk to your mom." Shay was younger than me, too. She was like a year and a half younger than me. So, like, this poor girl, she's like 15 and she's just like trying to give me the best advice she can at 15. And here we are, two little girls, like, trying to like support one another with this like monumental, life altering, adult ass decision. Like, it was just crazy. It was crazy. So, after Shay left, my mom, sorry, my 13-year-old was calling me. So that was crazy. So Shay just left, and my mom finally was like, just looking at me, and she's like, "You're pregnant." And I just burst into more tears, and I just kind of sat there and I was super quiet. I think at that point I just didn't want to disappoint my mom anymore. I had already caused my mom a lot of issues. I had already been, I don't want, I was a bad kid. Um, she knew I was hurting. She knew I had been through a lot of trauma. She knew that I was struggling. She knew where my heart was and the kind of heart I had. She knew that I was a really, really good person, just with a really messed up mind. Um, because of that, I had caused my parents a lot of trouble. A lot. So she kind of just looked at me and she's like, I don't want to talk to you right now. I need to gather my shit, like gather my thoughts. And she left. So I kind of just sat in my room. I was really scared to go out there. My mom is not a mean mom by any chance, like by any means of the word. My mom is actually a super compassionate, loving mom. She's that mom that everybody wished they had. She's that mom that accepted every single friend of mine for who they were, for what they didn't have, where they came from, didn't matter. It just was what it was. My mom just loved you if nobody else was loving you. My mom fed you if nobody else was feeding you. My mom housed you and clothed you and took care of you and fought for you if nobody else was doing those things. So like, I was very, very, very blessed to have the mom that I had. But I also know that my mom, it just started downpouring rain outside. My mom was a teen mom. My mom did not want that for me. She did not want that for me. And I don't blame her. I don't want that for my girls. I do not want that for my girls at all. And, you know, her and I ended up talking, and she was, you know, like, "What are you going to do? And how do you look at this?" And at the time, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I was not in a good space. I was not taking care of my body. I was doing bad stuff, illicit stuff, things I shouldn't have been doing. I was in no position to be a mom. None. So a couple of days had gone by, and I was kind of like at a point where I needed to make a freaking decision. I didn't know how far along I was. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know if I was going to tell Will, how I was going to tell my dad, how I was going to tell, you know, my auntie, and she was super close to me. I didn't know anything. I had no clue what I was going to do. So, excuse me, after a couple of days, I ended up having a dream about having a little baby girl. And in this dream, basically, she had angel wings. And she kind of like came into my life to save me. And I remember waking up and walking into the living room and looking at my mom, and I said, "I'm going to keep the baby, and I'm going to clean my life up, and I'm going to be the best damn mother to this baby." And my mom was scared. My mom was shitting her pants. I was a train wreck. When I say I was a train wreck, I was a freaking train wreck. I was never home. I was running away. I was, again, drinking underage. I was doing other underage stuff that I shouldn't have been doing, that nobody should be doing of age either. I was hanging out with people I shouldn't have been hanging out with in scary ass circles. Shortly before this, I I had gotten into a stolen car. So, I mean, that's a whole other story time. But, like, I'm telling you, like, I was going through some stuff really bad. And, like, imagine someone being in their worst state of mind coming to you being like, I'm going to have a baby and be a good mom. It's like, okay. So I understood that. She asked me who the dad was. I told her it's Will. She was like, who's that? You need to tell him. He needs to be involved. He needs to help you. I knew that wasn't going to happen. Even though he was older than me, I just kind of knew who he was as a person. I ended up telling my then best friend, and she was like, he ain't gonna help you nothing. And I was just like, right on. The way he reacted was super disgusting and absolutely deplorable. I will say that. That conversation was really gross, and I won't exactly say everything that happened that day on the phone, but I will tell you guys that when I called him, he answered and he was like, hey, sweetheart, how are you? I was like, I'm good. How have you been? How's the girl? Da 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 da. And then, you know, I was like, well, I got to talk to you and I would like to talk to you in person. He's like, well, I'm going away soon. Da 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 da. He was going on some kind of trip or for work or for something like that. I can't even remember. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll tell you on the phone I'm pregnant. And he basically laughed at me. No, he did laugh at me. And he was like, that's cool. Good for you. Congratulations. And I'm like, no, dummy, it's yours. And he was like, it's not my baby. You can take me on Maury. He said some more explicitive stuff to me and then proceeded to hang up. And I didn't speak to him again until May of that year, and she was born in August, which just further, like, when I went and got my first ultrasound and I found out my due date, it was the same week that I had lost my baby the summer prior. It was the same week. It was all kind of like signs. So yeah, I went through that pregnancy really alone. I had Shayla and I had one other friend and I had my mom, and that was about it. Everybody that I partied with and hung out with, obviously I couldn't hang out with them anymore. I couldn't party with them, and they didn't care that I was pregnant and they didn't want anything to do with it. A lot of my other friends pulled away because I didn't want to go to parties pregnant. Obviously I was trying really hard. I had went back to school. I was doing my schoolwork. I was studying all the time to get my grades up. I needed to get my grade 9, my grade 10, and my grade 11 at this point. I had a lot of work ahead of me, and I really wanted to be a good mom, and I really wanted to do the best that I could for the little girl that I was going to have. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't find out until April or May what I was having, and I really wanted a girl. I really wanted a girl. And her name is Savannah. I will say her name on here. I'm not upset about that. She has Instagram and all kinds of stuff now. She's getting older. That was really, really, really hard. I went through that whole pregnancy by myself. Nobody wanted to give me a baby shower. My dad was super mad, like beyond what my expectations were. He didn't speak to me for 3.5 months. He was super disappointed and mad. I understand that. I don't hold any animosity towards my dad for any of that. He eventually came around. He bought her crib and he set it up, and he was at the hospital when I had her. So, I mean, like, that was fine. Will did not step up during the pregnancy. Will's family had heard rumors that there was a teen girl pregnant with his baby, and he denied it to the 10th degree. I didn't find this out until after I had my baby, our baby. My labor and delivery was horrible. My pregnancy was horrendous. It was the worst. I plan on filming my next video after this about all of that. So I'm not going to get into too much of that. But I remember being pregnant and 17 and really, 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 really lonely. I was really sick. I was really scared. I was in 2 different parenting classes. I was also going to um, this like mom therapy, I guess, for pregnant women who have trauma in their life. I read every single parenting book that I could get my freaking hands on. I, you know, every time, like, I babysat too, on top of that. I babysat the whole time that I was pregnant to save all of my money. I didn't buy anything for myself. My mom and dad were super, super, super good to me. Like I said, my dad bought her crib. My mom helped like buy all of my pregnancy clothes. I didn't really get big until the 6th month because I was so, so sick, luckily. And they helped me with a lot. But every penny that I earned, and I would babysit until 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the morning, all weekend long, during the week, sick as hell, taking care of other people's babies just so I could save any kind of money. And I ended up saving probably over $1,000 in like 5 month time. And all of that money went towards everything that she was going to need, everything that Savannah would need. Um, but yeah, my advice would to be definitely wait until you're 100% ready. Don't force yourself into something that you're not. It worked really well for me. I've been clean and sober ever since I had my daughter. So she'll be 13 in August, and I've lived a really good life. I've had a lot of help. They say it takes a village, and I would 100% agree to that. It definitely took a village for me. And she is a super good kid. She's really good. Will did step up. I'll get into that, into my pregnancy and delivery story and everything. He did step up. He's been involved since she was 6, 7 months old, something like that. And we actually ended up getting back together when she was 16 months old, and I got pregnant with my second daughter when I was 20 years old, I do believe. And we had a second daughter together. So Will and I have 2 kids together. Things work out how they're supposed to. I got really lucky. I had really good parents and I had a really good support system, but not everybody gets that. It's not something that I would say gamble with. And you need to really, really know if you can do it all by yourself, whether that guy's there or not. Nothing lasts forever. The only thing that lasts forever is the love for your child, and your child's love for you. And it's not fair to a child to bring them into a world and not give them every opportunity available because you're not ready. So you need to understand that you have to give them the very best of the best from day one, whether you can or not. And if that means giving your baby up for adoption, then that's what you need to do. I truly believe that. So, I mean, might be an unpopular opinion. I'm not saying I didn't struggle. We struggled hard. We struggled real hard. She doesn't know that. She has no idea that we've ever struggled. It's so funny because she's like, "What? We were poor? What? We weren't poor." It's like, "No, we were poor." We struggled. I didn't have a car when I had her, so we walked everywhere or we bussed it. I didn't start driving until she was almost 2 years old. And again, that was only because my dad helped me pay for my license and pay for my first vehicle. I had to pay him back for my vehicle, but if it wasn't for my dad, I'd probably still be walking to this day. So it was hard. But yeah, so that's how I found out that I was pregnant at 17. Do I regret it? I personally don't. I feel like she made me stronger. She made me wiser. We learned together and we grew together, and I absolutely adore my daughter. And Savannah is super sweet, and she's actually wanted to come on my channel. There's some things about her that I will say in my next video, so stay tuned for that. I think I'm gonna upload again tomorrow. I'm gonna pre-film it right now. So I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Have a wonderful day. Stay beautiful. Love you guys.